The Tale of 2 and 10. Many years prior to this story, God had spoken to his servant Abraham that he would give his descendants an inheritance, land flowing with milk and honey. Years later, the Lord reminds his people in Exodus chapter 3 verse 17 of this promise once again. Even more years later, the Lord instructs Moses to explore this promised land, and so Moses sends off 12 men, one from each tribe, to carry out this great assessment. And so the men went, all the way from the desert of Zin to the borders of Hamath. 40 days later, the men returned with a report. 10 of these men with fruit as evidence of the land's great produce. But the men of the land were giants and strong. They were as grasshoppers before them. The city had massive walls around them. They certainly would be devoured. Caleb and Joshua, however, disagreed and insisted that they could conquer this land. It was good. God had promised. But fear had spread in the land, which led to distress and unbelief and worry and more weeping to God with bitterness and regret. Why was God doing this? So what do we learn? God had already and has always made known his promises, yet fear and unbelief invaded their space. Interestingly, in Joshua chapter 2, Rahab tells them that when these giants had heard how God had taken them out of Egypt, they had had their hearts melted with fear and were already really scared of the children of Israel. The number of those carrying the truth and the good news were few and outnumbered by those who carried fact, but incomplete facts, the incomplete truth shy of overall picture of what God had already promised. God has already and always promised us protection, healing, life, and life in abundance. We are walking in conquered territory. The enemy already knows that in us is great power through Christ. We just need to believe it and we'll see it in the land of the living. In the end, after such delay from fear, they make it anyway, and the Lord uses these carriers of faith and truth to take the people through to the promised land. Let us continue to declare the truth. The end.